Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to break down a really profound paradigm shift. We're talking about what it actually takes to safely scale autonomous systems without entirely losing control. And honestly, amazingly, the structural blueprints to solve this weren't just drafted yesterday in some panic over ChatGPT. They were actually pioneered way back in 2012. So, if you're building, managing, or investing in enterprise AI, what we are covering today is absolutely essential. We're diving straight into the work of Harshal Patel on accountability-gated systems and keyed human-machine hybrid systems.
All right, here is a quick look at our agenda. We're going to hit the AI accountability crisis, move beyond legacy human-in-the-loop models, look at accountability as a structural constraint, map out the 3 operational phases, examine the keyed hybrid system IP, and wrap up with the boundary of legitimate action. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The AI accountability crisis. Let's start by confronting the core anomaly that's facing enterprise AI today.
It's a remarkably simple question, but man, it is terrifying in practice. When an autonomous system actually acts, when it allocates resources or makes a judgment or enforces an outcome, who is actually accountable? Think about it. Is it the original designer? Is it the last operator who touched the keyboard? A corporate policy? Or is it the machine itself? Because as these systems increasingly operate over long time horizons without continuous human input, those traditional lines just blur. What we get is this massive diffusion of responsibility. The system scales up, but addressability, the ability to actually find a responsible human, just fragments and completely collapses.
So to solve this, we really have to aggressively contrast capability with legitimacy. Okay, capability is simply the technical ability to perform an action. It's math, it's compute, it's code. But legitimacy is the actual authorized permission to act, and that is exclusively grounded in human accountability. As the source text brilliantly puts it, it's like a tenant living in a house without actually owning it. A system can perform flawlessly, it can even outperform human judgment, and yet still completely lack the right to act. Because capability without permission isn't autonomy, it's just power without legitimacy.
Moving on to Section 2, Beyond Human in the Loop. As these systems get more powerful, the old ways of governing them are just rapidly becoming obsolete. We really have to move past this illusion that intermittent supervision is enough. Look at legacy human-in-the-loop models. They basically assume the human and the machine are totally separate entities, right? They rely on intermittent, episodic oversight. But the failure mode there is that when a crisis actually hits, responsibility is utterly diffused. Nobody knows whose fault it is. The accountability-gated systems, or the AGS Keyed Hybrid framework, completely flips this on its head. It relies on structural coupling. Oversight isn't just something that happens every once in a while. The accountability is continuous, and this is crucial. If that accountability fails, the failure mode is an intentional automatic reduction of authority, not a runaway machine.
Which brings us to a huge point. We have to completely redefine what proof of work means. We are not talking about cryptographic hash crunching here. In this framework, proof of work is the sustained, verifiable coupling between the human and the system over time. It takes the focus entirely off of what the system produces and puts it squarely on who remains accountable for its existence and its operation. Section 3. Accountability as structural constraint. Let's look at how we actually build this into the foundation of a system. This isn't just a fluffy policy document. This is a hardcore structural engineering requirement. Think of accountability exactly like a thermal limit in hardware. A processor will throttle itself so it doesn't melt, right? Well, an AGS system throttles its authority to prevent illegitimacy. External legitimacy is strictly required. The system can never, ever invent its own permission. If there's any ambiguity, or if the human connection drops, it immediately triggers a mandatory refusal. And here is the golden rule. Authority strictly reduces. It literally never expands during a failure. Accountability acts as a first-class operational constraint.
The source text starkly reminds us, power without accountability has always been dangerous. The novelty of enterprise AI today isn't just that this power exists, but it's the massive scale, the blinding speed, and the total opacity of it all. By treating accountability as a first-class constraint, these systems are structurally prevented from accumulating power faster than human responsibility can actually be maintained.
All right, Section 4, the 3 operational phases. This is based on what the texts call the ground zero phase principle. Basically, a system can only operate in one distinct phase at a time. Let's break them down.
Phase 1 is ICE, or the neural atomic body. This represents systems that are strictly refusal-bound. They require external legitimacy for absolutely every single action. They can stop things, sure, but they cannot command you or decide outcomes. If there is a question of authority, refusal is terminal, and it is immediate. Just like ice, it's solid, unmoving, and highly constrained.
Phase 2 is water, the custodial witness orb. Now this phase acts purely as a witness. It observes, it records, and it preserves the provenance of data. But it has literally zero execution or enforcement capabilities. Its memory never translates into authority. It just flows and reflects what happened without ever interfering. And finally, Phase 3 is fog, the sovereign acting body. This is where things get really serious. This phase represents systems that operate with internal legitimacy to make binding decisions and actually override refusals. The real danger in the modern world. It's when a system claims to be a neutral water platform or a safe ice advisory board, but subtly begins acting like fog, making sovereign, binding decisions without the required accountability. AGS forces these systems to honestly declare their phase up front.
Section 5, Keyed Hybrid System IP. Let's see how all this theory builds into concrete commercial intellectual property.
What is truly unique here, and for a commercial and technical audience this is huge, is that this structural approach to human control goes way back to 2012. It vastly predates the current AI hype cycle. This specific IP dictates that operation is structurally impossible without verified continuous coupling to a designated human operator, the key holder. It uses sensory state signaling, meaning physical signal generators verify that a real human is present and in the loop, creating this continuous, encrypted, fault-tolerant connection. Without that verified key holder, the system physically cannot execute authoritative actions, period.
So, naturally, you're probably wondering, what happens when things go wrong? Well, if that human connection drops, the system rigidly follows a set of steps to ensure authority contracts safely. First, it detects the drop. Second, it immediately suspends autonomous decision-making. Third, it freezes and preserves immutable audit logs. Now, actually, there is one super fascinating exception here, an optional, strictly bounded medical escalation fallback. If a human keyholder is incapacitated in a medical setting, the system can autonomously stabilize the patient, but only under predefined constraints, and it automatically reverts the very second human oversight is restored. It never, ever uses a crisis to permanently expand its power.
Section 6. The boundary of legitimate action. Let's establish the final operational boundary of these systems to wrap this up.
The absolute, unbreakable rule of this entire framework is this: authority must always be addressable. You must always be able to point to the specific human who is responsible. Autonomy is just how a system selects actions. It is never self-authorization. Humans in this system are intentionally non-load-bearing when it comes to the raw computation, but they are the sole irreplaceable source of legitimacy. When a system reaches the boundary of its human accountability, it has to stop. And halting isn't a failure, right? It's the ultimate safety feature.
So I'm going to leave you with this critical question to ask of your own architectures, your investments, and the platforms you interact with every single day. If your system's accountability collapses, does its authority immediately stop, or does it become a runaway threat? Because as we've seen today, bounded power is the only sustainable power. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep these structural constraints in mind as you build the next generation of autonomous systems.